Okay, I accept that. The peppers even dropped blossoms at one point, but the very second that the temperature came down just a smidge, you'd see that all the new flowers and it was setting fruit, da 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 da. This couldn't do that. Now, we found out later that their recommendations are that you keep the daytime temperature like below 75. And I'm like, who the heck has a greenhouse that's below 75 degrees during the day?
And by the way, this was recommended for greenhouse growing.
Yeah. I was specifically looking for greenhouse growing things. So I think they've actually changed. Well, the problem was they didn't publish this information. Now they've published it. Because I cannot possibly be the only person in the entire United States with a summer as hot as ours that had problems like this. I have been in professional greenhouses before. I have never, unless it was a greenhouse that was growing really super fragile, high dollar items where those people are going to be paying $1 gazillion a pound, seen a greenhouse that was that cool during the summer. Just not.
Yeah.
Even in the wintertime, most of the greenhouses get a smidge warmer than that. So unless you live in, Canada.
Maybe even if you live in Canada, it's not going to be that cold.
Right. Well, they have heated greenhouses. But it was just like, okay, so we were kind of ticked off, I think is the nice word on that one. So we're going to,
disappointed.
Ticked off. I read the fine print. I spent hours reading the fine print on tomato varieties, brassica varieties, everything, because I found that there were some very specific issues with various plants.
Yeah,
but all that information had been published for the other plants, but not for this one. Yeah. This one just said, we highly recommend this for hydroponics, and we highly recommend this one for greenhouses.
Yeah, so Irene goes through all of these different plant varieties, and she winnows the list down to a more manageable number, and then we talk about them, and we reread everything together.
Right. And so we will definitely not ever be growing that again.
Well, at least inside.
The plants outside didn't do any better, personally.
I guess we're not going to be growing that one again.
They could keep those seeds. I have no problem growing F1s. I do stay away from GMO. But all the growers we use guarantee that they don't sell any GMO. But at any rate, we have not worked out exactly what we're going to be growing next year. We will definitely be growing Amanda Orange, Big Beef, and
Gardener's Delight.
In
fact, we just picked some Gardener's Delight yesterday.
Yeah, good thing we did. I think they're little popsicles now. But
tomato-flavored popsicle.
Yum. Anyway.
Hey, you want to talk about cucurbits now?
We could do that. Cucumbers, squash, pumpkins, gourds, cantaloupe, and melons.
And we did something different this year. Remember what we did different?
Well, I didn't direct seed any of them.
That's one thing. The other thing is we built 2 new beds using the
half-rotted straw.
Yeah,
from the straw bales from the previous year's garden.
And the primary reason why we did that was to have more growing space, because we really don't have very much space in our raised beds. The beds on average are about 16 or 17 feet long, and they're about 2.5 feet wide for plantable space. Edge to edge, it's more than that because we have blocks on the side.
They're blocks, yeah.
So we don't have a whole lot of growing space, so we went ahead and built 2 raised beds with the decomposing straw.
Right. That worked really well. I normally try to spread cucurbits around the yard because they tend to attract the same vermin. So it's usually cucumber beetles and sometimes Colorado potato beetles and squash bugs. Those are the ones that all come flying in for them. Now, early on, the squash bugs came in this year. And I was out there every morning physically squishing squash bugs. That was all it took. It was interesting. I had almost no problem. I mean, I was religious about it. I would go out there first thing in the morning when the dog and cat went out, and I would spend up to an hour smishing and smushing and going under every leaf and checking every cucumber and every squash plant, watching for any egg masses, the whole thing. And really, after that first flush, we saw almost none. Now, another thing we did was we removed any of the showy 4 o'clocks that were in close proximity.
Yeah, showy 4 o'clocks also brings vermin.
They are a beautiful perennial. I think they're native to the area. If not, they've become native. And they're very, very drought tolerant. They have root masses underneath that are literally as big around as your arm or leg that store moisture they can survive for years without ever popping up a leaf.
Yeah, we dug a couple of the tubers out
Yeah.
years ago that were at least as long as our arm from the tip of our fingers to our shoulder, and were probably that big around at the biggest spot.
And the only way you can get rid of them permanently is to actually dig those tubers out.
And you have to get all of it.
Yeah. They're not as bad as the buffalo gourds, but they come close. But we've discovered that they are a major reservoir for certain kinds of critters, and squash bugs is one of them. So I've gotten to the point where, although I love to see them because they're a beautiful flower, they look like miniature morning glories all over the plant. And it's nice because you don't have to do anything. They just pop up and look beautiful. But if they're going to pop up, look beautiful, and collect bugs, I just can't have them in the garden.
Yeah. So we grew 3 different varieties of cucumbers.
Yes.
We grew Tasty Jade.
Yep.
That is... I think that's all in the greenhouse this year.
Yes, that was all in the greenhouse this year. We grew Tasty Jade, we grew...
Did we do Market
More? And we did National Pickling. And I do not eat cucumbers. I make cucumber things for Henry. So what we decided is, first of all, I grew too much Tasty Jade because he couldn't keep up with that.
Couldn't come close.
Right. And that's with all kinds of... I mean, we put up on the YouTube channel a whole bunch of different recipes for... different things you can make, fresh pickles, canned pickles, cucumber salads, a couple of different kinds of those. But he could not even keep up with that. So next year I'm going to grow Tasty Jade again because we really do like that. But I'm going to grow fewer plants in the greenhouse. And I'm going to continue.
We had 6 or 8?
8.
8 plants?
8 plants.
And probably what I would want to do next year is plant Tasty Jade plants on a rotating schedule,
right,
so that we have the ability to move new plants in when an old plant is going to start tapering off its production.
My current plan is to grow like 2 or 3, and then later in the summer probably grow another 2 or 3. So as the first ones taper off, you just get rid of the plants. We also grew the National Pickling and the Market More. They all did well. They all did very well. But Market More, Henry decided, was close in flavor and texture to Tasty Jade.
Yeah, it's very, very close.
So there's no reason to grow it. So if I grow National Pickling next year, and we have to look at that seriously, I made 1 million pickles this year.
I have a couple years worth of pickles.
Right, so I may not grow it next year. I may just stick with the Tasty Jade for fresh.
Yeah, I think Tasty Jade is the way to go.
I also made squash cucumbers, and that's another thing we grew was squash. We had zucchini, yellow crookneck, and, well, it wasn't really a crookneck. It was a yellow squash. Bennington green, which is a patty pan.
Patty pan, right.
We were very pleased with those varieties. Zucchini, I grew 2 different kinds. I grew Dunja and Desert, and we couldn't see a difference. Every single seed I planted germinated. So I was sitting there going, where am I going to put all these?
And we didn't have any friends who were gardening this year in our area.
No, because the gardening club was shut down because of the COVID. So, yeah. So we had more zucchini than we planned on. And we have a lot of frozen zucchini in the freezer ready to make more zucchini bread over the winter and things like that, which is fine. But we didn't see any difference between the Dunja and the Desert.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping we would like one better than the other, but you could stick them next to one another, do a blind taste test, and you're like,
the taste
like
same.
Zucchini.
Yeah. Now, we tend to grow these kinds of plants so that there's a place for them to spill over.
Yeah.
Either we trellis them up, or this year we planted them in those raised beds using the old straw bales, and we let them go down over the side.
Right. I purposefully planted them so that they would, as they got too big for being in the bed, they would fall over the edge of the bed and have more room, basically.
Yeah. We've done square foot gardening for 7
since before it was popular, because we were doing it when it was called biodynamic French intensive gardening.
So we've done that for many years, but we planted a lot more squash
Than we planned to.
and
Yeah.
cucumbers, all in that same single bed.
Now, the interesting thing about planting all that stuff there, we were not going to be saving seeds, so it didn't matter if we got cross-pollination, because I would go out there in the morning and these things would all be blooming, and I would have all these fat bumblebees and all these honeybees in there, and they would be totally covered with pollen, going from flower to flower. Now, if I was going to be trying to save seeds, this would be a disaster. I would have a total mixed mishmash. But we weren't trying to save seeds from the squash, so it didn't matter. And I would definitely do that again, because even though it did concentrate some of the bugs, it also concentrated the pollinators, which means we had fantastic pollination on the cucumbers and everything that was over
More
there.
importantly, there's some other things in that bed. Our fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff. In addition to the one cucumber bed that was full of
Squash
and
cucumbers.
the one next to it was full of cucumbers and cantaloupe. Now, one of the things that we realized this year, and this is phases you go through in terms of your productivity, is we really want to grow things that we have a hard time getting here. We had a wonderful cantaloupe harvest. Now, we did trial two different kinds because we'd grown two different kinds before, and I couldn't remember which one we liked better. And because these were in the same bed with exactly the same environment, this was the perfect test, because
Now we know.
we grew Sarah's Choice and Hannah's Choice, and we will be growing Hannah's Choice from now on.
The really important thing is when Irene said that we're trying to grow things that we can't easily get here, it's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily want to eat a ton of,
Right.
but you really savor it and you really enjoy it when
yeah.
you can get it.
If I wanted to get really picky about this, if I had one bed that I could plant in, and only one bed, I wouldn't grow green beans, because I can get good frozen green beans. Now, we love fresh green beans, and we will continue to grow fresh green beans, but we are probably going to modify some of that stuff too. What we are going to focus on is we're going to focus on the things that you really have a hard time getting from a grocery store. The cantaloupe. We grew watermelon for the first time this year.
Yeah, my mother gave us some seeds
Right.
that we don't know how old they were,
No, they actually weren't bad. They were fine.
and they germinated.
I was eventually able to get both watermelon and pumpkin plants. Got one pumpkin plant that survived to adulthood, and 3 watermelon plants.
So we planted one watermelon
One
out,
watermelon plant in the garden,
right?
and 2 in the greenhouse. I just decided that it was getting late in the season, and
Yeah, we talked about it and said, well, we're supposed to be warmer than usual
right,
for longer
but
than
let's
usual.
see what happens if we plant it in a pot.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and put it in a pot and put it in the greenhouse, and then we have
And
something
yeah,
outside.
now the very second that we put that pumpkin plant in the greenhouse, it got sick, and it never got better.
Right.
And I sprayed it, and I did this, and I did that, and I did the other thing. So it is susceptible to something we have around here. So I got to do a little research. I've got good up close pictures of the leaves. University of Georgia and a couple of other university sites have very good up close pictures of diseases on their watermelon leaves and on their pumpkin pie and their pie leaves. I'm going to sit down and try and figure out what the heck it had, because it's obvious we have that endemically here, and I got to come up with something else if we're going to go pumpkin pie.
From my perspective, the cantaloupes were a huge success.
Huge success.
But you know what? The even bigger success.
The watermelon.
Oh,
We got 3 watermelons. The first one was damaged. A rodent had chewed on it, and it wasn't ripe enough. The other 2 watermelons were so good. So good. So we are going to be probably not growing the same variety we grow this year. We'll probably grow something else, but we're definitely going to grow watermelons again next year, because it was just so delightful. You know,
that first watermelon that we could actually really eat was just so delicious.
So wonderful.
It was sweet. It was
the epitome. Well, we harvested it the way you're supposed to. You're supposed to harvest a watermelon ripe. If a watermelon is harvested before it's ripe, it does not ripen. It's not like a lot of fruit, like you could grab green bananas, put them on the counter, and they will ripen. No, that does not happen with watermelons. It doesn't get any more ripe once it's off the plant.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. What we're going to be growing next year is some basic things. I grow potatoes not because I'm trying to put up enough potatoes to last us through the winter. I am not going to grow giant russet potatoes in my buckets.
No, we're not. We're not trying to get baking potatoes, and we're not trying to get something that we could store in a root cellar. Well, because we don't have a root cellar
right now. While I would love to be able to say I have storage potatoes that I can keep all winter and things like that, I'd be happy if I just had some new potatoes, because we both love new potatoes. So this is kind of like the gourmet angle of it. You're going for the things that are really special to you. The tomato, warm off the vine, that you take into the kitchen, slice, and put on a tomato sandwich. I know I'm starting to drool. Do not drool on yourself while doing video, right? Gourds are fun, but that's an artsy craftsy thing, and
we have enough artsy craftsy.
We have enough artsy craftsy right now. I have enough artsy craftsy supplies here to keep me for the rest of my life. I'm going to skip brassicas right now, and we'll go on to alliums.